Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 28 of the Current Review podcast. It's been a while since David and I have recorded an episode, but here we are. And I think in the last month since we've gone on a recording hiatus, there's been a lot of news ranging from Slate, Iona, Tesla, and more. I think one of the really interesting things is the EV sales data from Q1 2025, which we can dive into. That could be our first topic, honestly, just because that really gives us an interesting glimpse into what EVs are doing well, which ones aren't. And yeah, that's basically kind of an overview. And David, do you have any thoughts on the EV sales? Any insight you've gained?
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. I'm happy. I'm excited and interested to get into the data because I think my hunches are that EV sales are still strong, but I'm biased, especially by the stuff that I get. But Tesla is now falling off of or starting to show cracks in the armor of their number one spot, which I think is great. I mean, we want more competition. It's more choice for consumers. So yeah, let's dive into it, and I'm excited to chat more about what's been going on in the EV space last month. Yeah,
for sure. So if you can see my screen, we have the EV truck sales. So this is interesting. So Cybertruck was the best-selling electric truck last year, and now it's kind of fallen off its pedestal. F-150 Lightning is now the sales leader, just by a little bit, but it is nevertheless now leading sales. And we see that, I mean, Cybertruck not too far behind, but both the F-150 and F-150 and Cybertruck are significantly ahead of the Silverado EV, GMC Sierra EV, and Rivian R1T. And it's actually kind of surprising how low the Rivian R1T sales are compared to all the competitors. Now, sure, the Rivian R1T competes with the R1S, and we see like a 70-30 split of buyers going for the R1S SUV as opposed to the pickup truck. But still, that's pretty low. And I guess you, David, as a Rivian owner, what do you think about that?
I think I have to agree. I was actually just going to say, I think the Rivian stands out because it's targeted towards non-truck owners, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll admit, even myself, I switched from an R1T to an R1S recently because it's just more practical and fits into our lives better than the truck version. I do miss the truck, a lot of pieces of it. You know, me stills carried with that launch edition R1T, but I have to say the R1S is just more functional for, you know, what we use it as a daily driver. So I think that's what explains it. You're right. Like the 70-30 split, you're just seeing a lot more R1Ss. I'm really interested to see how Chevy and GMC do. Like I'm actually, when I saw this data, I was very impressed at how strong the Chevy and GMC sales are. You know, it shows that they're starting to resonate with an audience that I think would be extremely resistant to conversion to full EV, and it shows like some solid adoption. You know, so I think it's promising to me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the Silverado and Sierra EV, now we can kind of combine them in the same truck, and also the GMC Hummer EV is in there. But Hummer, they did not release the sales of the pickup truck versus the SUV version. So we don't know the sales, but I can estimate it's probably around 1,100, so it wouldn't even be in the top 5. But all those trucks together are on the same platform, and I think they're all really great. And it's interesting that so much further behind the F-150 Lightning, because keep in mind the Lightning's gotten more expensive over time, and Silverado EV, for instance, offers better range, way better charging, better, I believe, I mean, it is a unibody truck, so there's some kind of caveats there, but I mean, it just offers better range, better charging, and slightly better performance, I think, on the base model, but it shouldn't be that notable. But it's just interesting that so much further behind the F-150 Lightning, and I would argue the Silverado EV is just a better truck than the Lightning.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes to show though, and I'd be curious to get Scott Case on here again and see what the resales are, because I think that'll be also an indicator. But I think my hypothesis here is that the Ford F-150 already a great truck and a great leading American brand, but for a lot of people who actually buy that truck, don't really need it as a work truck. It's kind of just like a daily driver. And for the range that it has and the regular just daily driving around town use, the Ford F-150 Lightning is a great truck. It's like fantastic for that.
Sure. But I mean, we're
People
like
that are,
looking at 230 miles of range versus 400 in the Silverado.
well, so
Like,
that's what
there
I
is-
was that's what I was
yeah.
getting to. Is like the people who tend to buy and float towards the Silverado and the GMC Sierra are more people who are actually using it as a truck, like an actual truck, including, I think the more important thing is the towing. I'm actually seeing on the road anecdotally a lot of people like putting the Silverado and the Sierra through its towing paces. And that's where the extra range is really, really helpful. If you're towing, like this is the season for boats and RVs, right? If you're towing boats and RVs, it's a lot more useful and practical to go with something on like that platform versus the Ford F-150 Lightning, which again, I don't know. I mean, this is just anecdotally, but I'm seeing a lot of like soccer mom types in a Ford F-150 Lightning, which is fine. Again, it's a great truck for that sort of like daily around town, drop the kids off at school and sports, whatever, but not necessarily if you're going to go actually use it as a work truck or tow, and I think that's what I'd be interested in seeing what the actual splits are, but that's my hypothesis based on like what I've seen around town,
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. But yeah, I feel like right now, if I was buying an electric pickup, regardless of my situation, I probably wouldn't get a new F-150 Lightning. And another reason why is you can get used F-150 Lightnings in the 30s now.
Yeah.
And a new one starts at about like 63 for an XLT, which I just think is a lot of money for a car with 230 or a truck with 230 miles of range. Which is fine. I think it would work. It would work great for me, but like it's a lot less than the Silverado EV. And the other thing too is the Silverado EV, the base model, the LT, has way more features than the F-150 Lightning does in XLT guys. So in the Silverado, you get ventilated seats as standard, Bose audio, all this stuff that you don't get in the F-150 Lightning XLT. So I don't know. Yeah. I think I'd be a little biased towards the Silverado EV just because I think it's a better truck. But I don't know. I'd be interested in testing both of them out.
Yeah, it's probably a better deal overall, but I suspect I think it has to do with like a little bit of identity and like people affiliate identities really strongly with like the brand and model car that they have, or in this case truck. And I think that's also why you're seeing Tesla kind of fall off a bit. Like we know Tesla's been taking a beating from the branding overall. And I think we had talked about it's a cool truck, but I think the novelty wears off over time. And again, that's where like I'd be curious to see what the used car sales numbers are for all of these. And I agree. I mean, if I were to go buy a Ford F-150 Lightning truck, it probably wouldn't be new. It'd probably be used because I think those are the best deals.
Yeah, and it was crazy too. The F-150 Lightning, you could, when it came out, the cheapest model was a Pro, which you could buy for 40 grand and then get the tax credit on it, which made it a very affordable truck. Now, you had like destination fees, so whatever, just say 42,000, and you got $7,500 tax credit, which I think is a really good deal. It's about 35 out the door. But now it's like the cheapest model you can order on the website is the XLT for like 63, 64, and it's just like, wow, it's not as cheap as it was when it came out. So I don't know. Yeah. Well, it definitely will be interesting to see. I definitely do think the F-150 Lightning, though, is due for some sort of a refresh upgrade because it's been 2020. It came out as a 2022 model year truck, and it really hasn't improved that much since. And it only has gotten way more expensive.
I agree. I mean, I'd be interested to see. I think the other indicator here you can see is Ford F-150 Lightning, I think, has been out there in consumers' hands the longest compared to all of these. So that also kind of shows that that's the advantage that Ford had in releasing this truck so early. But also because of that, they're due for a refresh. And, Rivian's already working on their second platform vehicle. Tesla, I'm sure, I don't know, they're always iterating very quickly. I'm curious to see if Ford can continue the success. I'd be excited to see it, but I'm sure they're dealing with all this other sort of tariff stuff now too.
So we'll see. Definitely.
Yeah.
And now onto another segment, which is the electric crossover segment, which is one of the biggest segments in the industry, I think, and that even kind of transcends internal combustion and gasoline or an EV. And here are the top selling electric crossovers last quarter. And Model Y, 64,000, which I think is very impressive that it's still holding such a huge lead, all things considered, because not only has there been all the backlash against Tesla, but Tesla was retooling the lines for the new refresh Model Y. So you kind of got two things going against you there, and it's still really kind of knocked everything else out of the park. And we kind of saw a little bit of an increase with the Mach-E because the Prologue was really popular and sales went down a little bit from last year. And yeah, I think this is really interesting. Any main takeaways from you, David?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it just shows that Model Y was a great and I guess is still a great product, right? Like, even though it's lost a little bit of its luster and overall Tesla sales are down, I mean, they're still leading this segment by a long shot. I agree. I think it's interesting that the Prologue has fallen to the Equinox EV now. I wonder what that says in terms of the people.
And the Blazer's not even on here, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, GM, in my opinion, GM sort of fumbled that launch of that vehicle overall, and it had such a bad rep from day one
with the software.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. I mean, I think we'll see how Tesla the new model does, because it's not out yet in consumer.
We have no idea what it is. It could be like a really downgraded Model 3. It could be something totally else. We have no idea.
Yeah. And we'll see what this whole tax credit stuff does with the sales. But I'm optimistic in that, look, these are all great vehicles and people starting to discover that as it gets out there and word gets out there. Yeah, we're going to see just an increase of these numbers and a leveling of the playing field between Tesla and everyone else, best of the rest. So,
yeah. And I think the one really interesting thing is the Volkswagen ID4, which I would argue is an EV I would avoid buying new, just because Volkswagen increased the base price by so much recently, and it's not really much better than the original one that came out. And we don't even see the ID4 on the top 5 list because it's way down. And that's even after Volkswagen was selling all their 2024 model years for really cheap. They were doing like the $149 a month lease specials and really crazy deals like that. And still, it's like they're not even on the top 5 leaderboard. So I think if there's any takeaway from this, it's like, oh yeah, Volkswagen, they definitely got to do a lot better because they're being defeated by pretty much every competitor. And like right now too, it's like if I was looking at an ID4 or Mach-E, I would buy a Mach-E any day over an ID4. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to go and talk about the Scout at all. But I've been hopeful for it, right? But to your point, with Volkswagen really falling off here, even though they had an early start, I don't know. I'm concerned. We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like if we even go to Volkswagen's website, it's like I don't really see any reason to buy an ID4, and it's just because there's so much money and they're really objectively not that great. I mean, they're good cars, but there's no reason that it should start in the like mid $40,000 range when you have like the Mach-E, which is basically 40,000 brand new. So yeah, like an ID4 Pro starts at 45,000 without destination fees, and it's like you spec one out. So there you got 46,520 for the base model. And you get manual cloth seats. You don't get a sunroof. You have pretty limited array of options. And it's like, I don't know why I would buy this over a Model Y when the Model Y has, so many more features as standard. So like even look at this. This is ID4, 46.5 base price with destination fees. Like, you want all-wheel drive? That's about 50,000 with destination fees, and still then that's still the base model, so you still get cloth seats, and it's I just don't see why. At least it's pretty apparent to me why the ID4 isn't doing that well. It's just it costs way too much money.
And I mean, to your point, like it's probably due for an update. It's been around since what, like 2019?
Mm-hmm. 2020, late 2020 it came out.
All right, late 2020. Yeah. So it's even older than the F-150. So it's probably due for an update for sure.
But see, that's kind of my thing. If the car hasn't changed much, like the Mach-E has gotten cheaper since 2021 when it came, or since late 2020 when it came out. It's a lot cheaper now. And it had some marginal improvements, nothing like whoa, but it got a little bit better and a decent amount cheaper, which I think is great. That's what you want to see. So if the car doesn't change that much, at least make it cheaper over time, because manufacturing might be more efficient, etc. But the Volkswagen, it got a little bit better. It has more horsepower as base model, a little bit more range. So marginal improvements, kind of like the Mach-E, but it's more expensive than the original one. And, from the exterior, it looks like the same car. And right now I can buy a used all-wheel drive ID4 for about 20 grand. So why should I spend 50 grand for a new one that's a little bit better?
Yeah. No, 100%, right? 100%. So I don't know. Well, hopefully these car companies figure out and get the update cycle on these EVs a little bit faster. That's on par with, because that's normally the cadence is like every 4 or 5 years they update the car. Maybe not the fundamentals of the platform, but at least some of the aesthetics and the feature offerings, so it's a better value, right? So
for sure. And so now I think recently came out is a new Model Y long range rear wheel drive, which I would argue is probably one of the most compelling options for a new electric crossover on the market. And we see 357 miles of range. We don't know how much that gets in the real world. At least the Model 3 seems to get pretty close to its EPA range. So that'll be interesting to see what the Model Y can do. But this is.
Yeah, I mean, from a product perspective, it's exciting, right?
Yes.
It's got more range. It's got a little bit more space in some areas too. Is that right?
I think so. I think the front trunk might be a little bit bigger. And
exactly.
I'm not sure what else. But I think one of the real big takeaways with this is you get all the features in the all-wheel drive as you do in the rear-wheel drive. So you get the 15-speaker subwoofer sound system. You get the rear touchscreen. You get the better suspension. You get the ambient lighting. You get a bunch of other features. And I think what's nice too is you get ventilated seats now, because the old Tesla's really hot seats in the summer. So I think this is it's a very compelling option on paper.
I mean, if you think about it, right? So when like the Model 3 and the Model Y first came out, right, it was Tesla's first foray into quote unquote affordable vehicles, right? Mass market vehicles. And I recall hearing that from a lot of people and myself when we got a Model Y ourselves, that the interior finish was still felt really cheap. It was interesting because it was like a $50,000 car with like $20,000 finishes, But I was okay because I knew like performance and some of the other things. I was okay to sort of sacrifice it as like an earlier adopter. But it's interesting, as we were talking about like the next generation vehicles that these cars need to be coming out with and offering something more. I think Tesla's figured out here to make the tweaks here and there and improve the premiumness just from like a touch and feel, like a tactile perspective inside. And it's exciting because now I think it's still at around that $50,000 price point, even though inflation's gone a little bit crazy since it first came out. And you're like getting a little bit better feel. Like it feels more like a $50,000 car,
Yeah. And that was one of the things I noticed when I drove the new Model 3 Performance, is just how much it's improved, like interior quality. Like the doors sound so much better when you close them. It's so much quieter when you drive. The suspension's so much better. So like you can really see all those kind of incremental changes they made over the years. Because I would love to like see this versus like a 2020 Model Y, because the 2020s had, you know, like very rough suspension. They were interior fit and finish wasn't that great. Build quality overall probably sucked compared to this. And now you have this car that's like, I would argue is worthy of being a premium vehicle. Like we could kind of put it in the same ballpark as, you know, maybe an Audi Q4 e-tron or something like that.
Yeah, 100%. I think this is definitely going to start to convert people from like the Audi Q class vehicles to a Model Y, because I think the offering is on par, right? And better in some instances if you compare again like performance in terms of like 0 to 60 times and torque and all that stuff, you know.
Yeah. And I don't know. And I think when you have like a car like this, it really kind of questions. It's like, okay, why should I be spending $65,000 on an Audi Q4 e-tron, or something like that? Because, you know, and like I've experienced the Q4 e-tron stuff and like genuinely like not that impressed. Like the regular Audi e-tron, I think that's a good, nice luxury car. Would never buy it new. I think it's way overpriced. But like the Q4 e-tron, it's like, I don't see why this thing is like considered like a premium vehicle. Like there's plastic all over the doors. Yeah, they sound nice when you close it, but that's literally it. The infotainment sucks, all this. And, you know, you don't really, I think when you compare like a Tesla Model Y versus like an Audi Q4 e-tron, they do their premium features, I guess, in different places, I guess is probably my best way of putting it. So like Tesla, you get obviously better user interface, but Audi, maybe the overall build quality is going to still be better or whatever. But yeah, I think it's definitely a really good option, new Model Y, and be interested to see where it goes from there.
Yeah.
Sales.
So going from premium cars to now like hopefully the most affordable EV coming out, right? Do you want to talk about the new Slate?
Sure. So I think this is really exciting. I didn't put down a deposit yet. Maybe I would be convinced, but yeah, I think this could definitely tap on an area of the market that's never been touched on before recently. Because I think the thing when you look at it, there's all these like older Toyota pickup trucks, Japanese pickup trucks from like the late 80s, early 90s that are two doors, and people are just really interested in them. And kind of having this electric version that's very utilitarian might be of interest to a lot of buyers. And especially now with trucks costing so much money, it's like this could be great. So
yeah, it's got a nice retro vibe to it, you know, like
yeah.
you don't see too many two-door trucks, pickup trucks anymore, right? Like I feel like for me, it sort of harkens back to like the 90s, you know, like Ford, basic Ford two-door Ford Ranger or Toyota, early Toyota pickup trucks, right? That were literally just like two people, maybe on a bench seat, and then like a bed, right? Very, very simple, very, very affordable, right? And I like how they've set it up to be super customizable. Like it's super basic so that you can get the affordability and access down, but like customizable to your own preferences, which I think to me, it feels like they're targeting a younger audience here, specifically for the affordability and the ability to customize, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think especially too with this customizability is it's going to make manufacturing so much easier, because now your actual main factory, you're just going to be building the exact same truck without, so basically for what they build is just this. They'll build the truck, no paint, so you don't see any paint on it. And that's what they're building at the factory. And then maybe they'll have another factory, maybe off-site or wherever, doing all the additional customizations. And that's where they're probably, the customizations I would assume aren't going to be incredibly cheap. But nevertheless, you've got this one manufacturing line that's going to be uniform throughout, which is going to make production so much easier because there's literally no customization. Same truck. And then you can customize it to how you like. And then obviously people would pay a premium to say, oh, I want, you know, the SUV version. I want this wrap. I want, these wheels, I want whatever. And I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think I like that approach of like super simple from the factory, right? Simplify things and sort of put out the basic stuff, and then potentially partner up with more local shops or dealers to go do the customizations. And I think like I've talked to a couple people in the industry like around dealers specifically and their thoughts on the transition to EV. And it's mixed and it's changing, right? Especially as EVs are becoming more mass market and accepted. But the general gist that I've heard from dealers in the resistance is like, look, in the current ICE vehicle model, they make a lot of their money on service appointments. Like, you know, a lot of them don't make a ton of money necessarily on the initial vehicle sale, but the idea is that they're local and they'll make money on the service appointments. And the fact is, like, EVs just require a lot less service. As much as they don't, it's not that they don't have any service, but when you compare to the amount of service required in general for ICE vehicles to EVs, like it's a lot less. And that's going to take a lot of business away from dealers. Now, this right here, I think is offering a really interesting alternative where it's like, okay, you're not going to be doing like the general operating maintenance service throughout the life of the vehicle, but maybe you could do like customizations. And maybe somebody, if it's so easy to customize, will want to customize every couple of years, right? So you replace the service appointment with I want a new wrap, right? Or I want to now add in a hatchback and 2 additional seats. And that's something that you could do. And that's something that can make money off of, you know?
Yep. And I think the other thing too is just repairability is going to be so much better on here because, hey, if you get a little fender bender, all these body panels, they have open like screws. So you could literally just screw off the body panel that got damaged and then just replace one probably for not a lot of money. And that's really nice because EVs are just expensive to repair, like Rivians. You have massive body panels, Teslas as well. And being able to effortlessly replace some small damage on your truck for probably a couple $100 would be really awesome. So I think that's a really cool step in the right direction just because there is no product like this on the market. And that's really cool. So there's like a lot of people who are kind of like hating on this truck, but it's like there's really nothing you can compare it to because there's nothing exists like this right now. And especially at this low price point, I think it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I'm rooting for them, but I will say I also understand the skepticism. You know, America's tastes have generally gone away from the 2-door truck to bigger 4-door vehicles in general. This is why, like, when we looked at the trucks, like the Ford F-150 and the GMC, all those trucks are doing really well because they're just big and you could fit a lot more stuff. But I don't know. I think you're right. I'm hopeful that maybe this will target a different audience that is waiting for an option like this and will kind of dive into it. And it'll do really well because then that opens up the door for so many other people to experience EVs. So,
for sure. Yeah, I think it's really exciting. And the other thing too, it's a rear wheel drive as standard right now. There's no all wheel drive option. But I do like rear wheel drive because I despise front wheel drive vehicles. I don't think front wheel drive should ever power a vehicle. I always support rear wheel drive. So I think that's cool. And 200 horsepower is like not that much, but also I would assume it would be pretty quick, especially with the small battery option, because it shouldn't weigh that much. It's not a big vehicle and it's like a 53 kilowatt hour battery pack. So I don't know, it might actually be pretty quick, which would be pretty fun.
Yeah, especially if it's really light, right? So, so yeah, no, I think it's interesting. There aren't too many the rear wheel vehicles died, I think, in like the 2000s.
Yeah,
they stopped.
There's so much more fun.
Yeah, it's so much more fun to drive. But I think from a gas car efficiency and cost perspective, is easier to go front wheel. So
interesting. But that's anyways, I guess it kind of touches on like the Chevy Bolt, which is front wheel drive. And it's just probably like their, old school way of thinking to put the electric motor on the front axle when it's like, it makes the driving experience so much worse because then you're fighting torque steer whenever you're accelerating. And it's just no, EVs and front wheel drive do not mix.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
Started it. And then they were like, okay, yeah, like this was bad. We're going to rear wheel drive.
I mean, well, because it makes sense for a gas vehicle with the engine in the front.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
For balance and that, but when you don't have a heavy engine in the front, then like why do
You've
front
got
wheel
a
drive?
50-50 weight distribution. And now you're putting the drivetrain up front. And then whenever you accelerate, naturally the center of mass is going to kind of go more towards the rear of the vehicle as you're accelerating. And then now you have less traction on the front because all the weight shifted towards the rear of the car. So
Exactly.
yeah.
So
Little
anyways,
rant,
well,
yeah.
we'll see. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to drive it yet. Hopefully, one of
Yeah, I
us
don't think
gets a chance
anyone's done
to
it.
test it out, and you can sort of put some more pluses or pros in the rear wheel drive category for EVs.
Yeah,
So yeah,
definitely. I can't wait until they're going to start letting people test them out. I'm excited.
cool.
So
Well,
yeah, I guess with that, that was our episode 28. So thanks everyone for watching, and maybe we'll try to record pretty soon.